Next on Max TV, we take a look back at the saga that was Pacquiao Mayweather, and we have news and notes coming up on the next round. And welcome to the next round, brought to you by Everlast. It's the 2010 season premiere. Gabriel Montoya, Steve Kim, talking boxing once again. We begin round number one, and folks, don't kill the messenger. It's a no-go. Pacquiao and Mayweather will not be fighting, and instead, Manny Pacquiao, he will be facing Joshua Clottey on March 13th at Dallas Cowboy Stadium in Arlington, Texas, while Floyd Mayweather, according to his promoter, Richard Schaefer, will be fighting on that same day. We'll get into that more later. But here's the bottom line. I think greed, hubris, and arrogance killed what should have been the defining moment of 2010.
And on both sides of the coin here. You know, I think what it came down to is Floyd decided to draw a line in the sand that he couldn't erase. He asked for the blood tests. He wanted a random, Olympic-style testing. Then he kind of had to back off of that as he realized that Manny Pacquiao is not a guy that's going to be pushed around. You have two guys that are equal stars. Manny Pacquiao thinks he's the bigger one. And he treated Floyd that way. He refused to to bend to his will. He refused to let Floyd become the athletic commission. And here we are at this point. We don't have the fight that we all wanted. In fact, we're going to get a couple fights that nobody ever asked for. It's a damn shame.
Here's the thing. There is no such thing as the Mayweather State Athletic Commission, but obviously we want a fair playing field in all sports. Here's what I think, putting that aside. Manny Pacquiao was under no legal obligation to take extra tests. And when I hear people say he didn't want to take the test, that's absolutely wrong. He was willing to take the test. They couldn't come to a compromise on the extra concessions. And that's a mistake that Aaron says he made. He says when and if this fight is negotiated again, they're going to go with the commission's ruling, as they should. The regulatory body sets the standards, and all fighters should live by them. I don't believe in selective enforcement in any way. Now, here's what I think should happen, though. I think this has opened up a very, very interesting dialogue as to are the testing procedures in the Nevada State Athletic Commission and in boxing, are they stringent enough? Are there enough protocols to make sure that fighters are clean? In my opinion, in the opinion of people that really know about this, Dr. Margaret Goodman, Victor Conte of Balco, former Balco, they believe no. Well, here's what I think. Starting from this point forward, I think the commissions all across the world and all the sanctioning bodies should start to think of ways to improve the testing process, change the regulations, and at that point, have all the fighters live by those standards.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's a big negative that the fight didn't happen, but the positive that comes out of it is that, one, all of us got very much, educated on the testing procedures. None of us are experts at this point, except for the people that you mentioned. But now we know that the tests are outdated. There are drug cheats working right at this moment, to find a way to get past all the different testing in all the different sports. But, now the door is wide open. And I really think, to get a little deep on you, Mahatma Gandhi once said that you want to be the change that you want to see in the world. Now, if Floyd really wants this sport changed and he really wants it cleaned up, then prove it in the next fight. If Golden Boy wants the same thing, prove it in the next fight. If Mayweather-Mosley happens or Mayweather takes on any fighter in the world, then pay for the kind of testing that you want. Make it happen. Set an example to the sport. That's a hell of a positive, and it's a way of saying that what he asked of Pacquiao was not a way of getting out of the fight, but rather a real concern on his part, and that he wants to see the sport change. And I'm all for it. I think a level playing field is needed. I don't think the testing, I had no idea that it was so inadequate. I think we need to upgrade. I think the sport, needs a lot of changes, and this would be a huge step forward for boxing.
Wow, Gabe, you are starting up the year with a bang with Gandhi. I don't know if I can top that for the rest of the 12 months. Here's the thing. What I found interesting in the moral high ground, I think Golden Boy lost a lot of traction when it was found out last year when Zab Judah, when he was scheduled to face Shane Mosley before he supposedly ran into a shower door, he wanted extra blood tests on Shane Mosley, who in grand jury testimony admitted to using EPO, the cream and the clear, with the help of Victor Conte. And yet at that point, Richard Schaefer believed what's good for the goose was not good for the gander. He said, absolutely not. We go by the commission rules. Shane Mosley shall not be treated like a criminal. Here's what I found fascinating. It's been brought up by other writers. Shane Mosley fights January 30th against Andre Berto. Andre Berto is managed and advised by Al Heyman. who happens to also manage and advise one Floyd Mayweather, who was so vociferous in wanting tests against Manny Pacquiao, yet come January 30th, there will be no extra test. Irony.
Yeah, it is irony. And, to be fair to Richard Schaefer, he has come out with a statement saying, when I made that statement, I was nowhere near as educated on the subject as I am now. And now I've changed my stance, and I would like testing to go forward. Here's the thing. They're not doing it for this fight. And it is a little hypocritical. Granted, they're pretty deep into their training camps, and it's hard to probably implement something like this, just off the cuff. But going forward, they have, it's only January. There are plenty of fights to be made all through the year, and Golden Boy's going to have a lot of dates on HBO and elsewhere. Start the testing now. If you want to change the sport, then change it yourself. Don't, point at Manny Pacquiao, who's never tested positive for anything other than being a card-carrying badass, and change the sport from within your own organization.
And let's not be naive, and I've heard this a lot. Manny Pacquiao's never tested positive. Let's not be naive. This is the year 2010. This has been the age of the PEDs. A lot of athletes, it has been proven,
this is very true,
beat the testing system for years. Not implicating anybody, but let's just face reality. Let's not be naive about this. Here's the thing. Going forward, it looks like he's going to fight Joshua Clottey. I think it's a tough fight, and I think Manny Pacquiao is almost in a no-win situation. Not a lot of people from the mainstream know who Joshua Clottey is. Number two, Clottey is a very, very difficult out. And number three, with both Mayweather and Pacquiao moving forward, regardless of who they fight next, if it's not against each other, Gabe, I think there is going to be plenty of backlash. I
think it's going to be a lot of backlash here. And it is. I mean, Manny went from going against Mayweather for possibly $40 or $50 million. Now he's getting a minimum of $10 million to fight Josh Clottey, who is a very tough out. He's got a hell of a defense. He's hard to get to his body. It's hard to get around his high guard. He's actually got a nice jab, decent hand speed, and he's a very big welterweight. He has trouble making the 147-pound limit. And Steve, they're talking about doing a catchweight fight, and I got to say, you're taking an ugly situation into an even uglier one at this point. And I, for one, am not going to go and cover something that's a catchweight fight. If you're going to defend your belt as a welterweight and you're going to campaign in the welterweight division, you can't change the division's weight limit to 144 pounds to suit you. If you're too small and 144 works for you, then come in at that. But the other guy should be allowed to come in at 147.
Yeah, but Gabe, here's the problem, though. The Pandora box has been open, and you're never going to close it. Number one, I would also argue catchweights have been around for years. A lot of your fights in the history of boxing have had catchweights. And number two, just about every single marquee fighter this point forward is going to use catchweights. Mayweather had every physical advantage against Juan Manuel Marquez. Not only did he come up with a catchweight, he decided he was going to make no real effort to even make that catchweight and then drew up his own contract so he wouldn't have to give up more money. I'm sorry, that's out of the barn. You're not getting it back in. It's unfortunate. And here's the thing about Clottey. Looking at his body, I don't know if he has 3 or 4 pounds to shave off. It does seem to be a little bit unfair.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't have it to give. I don't think he's made 144 pounds in about 10 years, something like that. And just because the door is open doesn't make it right. Catchweights are as old as the sport. I agree with that. But that's usually when you have two champions in different divisions and they want to meet in the middle as a compromise. Both guys consider themselves champions, and so a compromise is needed. But, a catchweight campaign is a whole other thing. And that's what Manny's beginning. And I think it's just downright wrong.
Well, I think we should have a new weight class, Pacquiao weight. Because that's obviously he's trying to make up his own weights. Here's the thing. Moving forward, I think the Cold War is back on. I think this is 1975 all over again, with Brezhnev, Nixon, and Jimmy Carter. We better bring in NATO or the United Nations. I was talking to Bob Arum over the weekend. He said this to other people. He said, if and when we move forward with the Pacquiao-Mayweather talks for September, he said to me, he better get himself a real promoter, a guy like Don King. And after I fainted and I fell off my chair and I bumped my head, I just said, Bob, are you actually telling me in the year 2010, you are now yearning to see Don King, your former arch rival, across the table? Yes, absolutely. Could you imagine that little pissant pulling this on Don? He may have a point, but I think there's a huge divide here. Pacquiao is now suing the Mayweathers and Golden Boy. I don't think there's any doubt that Bob Arum wants Golden Boy out of the Manny Pacquiao business. They are both rattling their sabers, saying March 13th is ours. The Cold War is back in full effect.
I'm not even sure I'd call it a Cold War. I think it's pretty much an open war.
It's nuclear.
It's happening in the streets. Jack Bauer, where are you when we need you most? It's just ugly. We went from the pinnacle of the the best event possible in the sport of boxing, taking us, back into the mainstream. I mean, I got guys, that I would never think were even boxing fans stopping me and saying, what's going on with this fight? That's the level of saturation it was having, for the casual fans, for the hardcore fans. This was huge. And now we've gone completely the other way, where we got promoters suing each other again. We got guys fighting on the same dates. It's just turned into an absolute disaster.
And by the way, you go back to 2005, 6, and 7 when the Cold War was really brewing. It hurt the sport, it hurt the fans, and it hurt the fighters because too many good matchups simply did not happen. And if you go back to that agreement that was mediated by Judge Daniel Weinstein, from that period on, Golden Boy and Top Rank co-promoted a lot of successful events. You would hope we don't go back to what it was a couple of years ago. It looks like, moving on quickly, Manny Pacquiao is going to fight Joshua Clottey, Dallas Cowboys Stadium. Floyd Mayweather looks like he's going to stay, at least if we were to believe Richard Schaefer, March 13th. He's not going to fight Matthew Hatton. So everyone ripping Mayweather for Matthew Hatton, stop that right now. Kill that noise. It's not going to happen. We're going to believe Schaefer. Who would you like to see Mayweather fight in lieu of fighting Manny Pacquiao this spring?
Tim Bradley's a nice choice. It's a guy that could move up in weight and probably handle it. Zab Judah's looking for a fight. No, I don't want to see that fight.
Haven't we done that before?
Yeah, we have done that before. And that was actually a very tough fight for the first 4 rounds. It's hard to say. I mean, is Mayweather a true welterweight? Then maybe you could look around for Paul Williams doesn't have an opponent. He's saying he's willing to come down. I know he's advised and managed by Al Heyman, and he doesn't want to put his fights together, but that's a hell of a fight. It's really hard to say. I think Mayweather has put himself in a position where he just took a tune-up fight against Juan Manuel Marquez. He can blame that, he was going to fight a tough fight, and Manny Pacquiao, walked away from the negotiating table, so he gets another gimme. But I don't think the fans are going to put up with it.
Gabe, gut feel, yes or no, September, do we see Pacquiao-Mayweather?
Yes, we do. I think so. But, we've also heard the rumor that Mayweather is thinking about holding off till May 1st and waiting for the winner of Berto-Mosley, which a lot of people think is going to be Mosley. Once again, if that fight happens, it's a perfect opportunity for boxing to clean its house. You've got an admitted performance-enhancing drug user against Floyd Mayweather. Set the standard, do the blood test, and give me the fight that actually I've wanted all along. I never really was crazy about Pacquiao-Mayweather. I've always wanted Mosley-Mayweather because I think it's a more significant welterweight fight.
Mosley-Mayweather, if they go under the auspices of the Mayweather State Athletic Commission and Mayweather does impose his will and Mosley does agree to extra set of testing procedures and he beats Shane Mosley, I think coming into a Pacquiao-Mayweather negotiation, I think at that point Floyd Mayweather has every right to ask Manny Pacquiao for exactly what he asked of Shane Mosley and to comply with those rules. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would totally agree. And actually, to go back to the Judah-Mosley fight where Schaefer turned down the drug test, Shane actually readily agreed, said, you could test my blood every day. I'm still going to beat you. And I think that really, going back to having the doors wide open, the onus is now on the commissions. They've been exposed as being inadequate at this point. They need to step forward, and I think that Floyd ultimately is going to get what he wants, whether he really wanted it in the first place or not, which I think he did. I think change is inevitable at this point. Boxing needs to clean up its house. It needed to for years and years, and above anything, I really blame boxing for not having its house in order and being ready for when the Super Bowl showed up.
So there you have it, round number 1, initial edition, 2010 of the next round. We come back, we wrap it up with news and notes. And we are back on the next round, wrapping up with news and notes. We go to the fight review, the season premiere of Friday Night Fights on ESPN2. IBF middleweight eliminator Roman Karmazin gets off the deck, stopping Dionisio Miranda in 10. Then Saturday in Germany, WBO super middleweight titles, Robert Stieglitz, the TKO in 5 over Ruben Acosta. Here's what I think about Roman Karmazin. Got his guts, he's got his balls. Unfortunately, he doesn't have his legs or his reflexes. A miraculous win in many respects, but I got to tell you, I saw a guy really long in the tooth, over the hill, and you know what? I give him no shot of beating Sebastian Silvestre.
No, none whatsoever. It was like, legs, stop failing me now. He looked old, and from the gray hair, the receding hairline, just the reflexes, he couldn't get out of the way of the right hand. But what he did have was his veteran's guile, his veteran savvy. He was able to kind of negate the right hand from Miranda through the middle of the fight, started to get in close, but it seemed like every time a really nice flush shot landed, his legs absolutely went. He was totally hurt, and then he had to kind of move around. It seemed, though, that Miranda just wasn't good enough to get him out of there. He would throw a bunch of punches, and Karmazin would block them, and then he would kind of shoot his wad and let Karmazin off the hook. But I thought it was, it was a pretty amazing fight. It was a pretty good fight.
Well, I think after the 9th round, none of us there gave Karmazin a shot to win that fight. And
no shot at
Teddy
all.
Atlas mentioned this on the broadcast. There comes a point in time when Roman Karmazin now gets hit, you just don't like the way he looks in terms of the reaction to those punches. World-class professional fighters will react a certain way, and they almost have a poker face. They don't give you an indication that they're hurt. But with Roman Karmazin, you get every single sign.
Yeah.
Physically, facially, body language-wise, he is absolutely shook up by good, solid punches to the chin.
Yeah, every time he got hit, it was almost like he put it on Twitter. I'm very hurt right now. I just got hit by a right hand. But you got to give it to him, man. For him to come back out, and it seemed like every time he got hurt, the next round he would come out very strong and attack Miranda and get right back into the fight. Even the round where he was knocked down, and I thought he was doing well before the knockdown and doing very well after the knockdown. And you just got to give it up to him for finishing that way, for looking for a way to win and finding it. But, basically he earned the right to lose to Sebastian Silvestre.
Right, and he would have to put that Twitter thing on 140 characters or less. Moving on here to the fight preview. Friday Night Fights, Juan Burgos takes on Juan Martinez. And on that undercard, Demetrius Andrade takes on Bernardo Guerza. Then on Fox Sports Net, the premiere of Top Rank Live, Vanes Martirosyan takes on the Dream, Kasim Uma. Got to be completely honest, main event doesn't really interest me that much, but Demetrius Andrade does. I think if there's a guy who might step up and really be the best prospect in boxing, certainly the most talented guy of our past Olympic team, I think it is Demetrius Andrade.
Yeah, this guy is the real deal. He's a southpaw. He's 6'1". He's a junior middleweight. He's got speed. He's got power, and he's really watching a lot of tape of him this weekend. He's really picking up the veteran tricks. He knows how to wrap his hand around on one side and wail away with the other. And he's a hell of a finisher. I think this guy's just got the whole package. He's very exciting.
The thing that I like, Gabe, they're keeping him active. He's not staying out 4 or 5 months. I think this upcoming year, I believe ESPN2's made a little bit of a commitment to really showcase this kid and help in this developmental process. I believe he's co-promoted by Joe DeGuardia and Artie Palullo, and I give them credit. If you look at the box rec, there hasn't been a lot of time in between fights for Demetrius Andrade. I think by the end of the year, if he develops the way some people think, I think he'll be knocking on the door of really being a true contender by the beginning of 2011. And I got to tell you, Gabe, I'm very excited about Top Rank Live. Now, listen, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Their deal with TV Azteca was an absolute, unmitigated disaster. If it was a draft pick, it would have been Jamarcus Russell. Top Rank Live, though, seems to be more organized, and it's going to be more what we expect from Top Rank. Having the ability to develop fighters in proper settings. Vanes Martirosyan is a kid, I believe, is inching closer to really being a bona fide 54-pound contender.
Oh, yeah, there's no question of it. It's night and day. He was with Ronnie Shields for a while. He had left the wild card and Freddie Roach to get out of Los Angeles and a lot of the distractions that were surrounding him, being in his hometown. He went over to Texas, didn't quite work out. It was like installing a whole new offense that just didn't really work for him. I talked to Vanes last week, and he said that Shields had him fighting more like Juan Diaz as opposed to using his own natural strength. Now you fast forward, he comes back to the wild card, and in his last few fights, you see the aggression, you see the combinations. He's up on his toes, which is how he prefers, and Freddie Roach is allowing him to fight his fight and merely accentuating all his positives. I think he looks great. I think he stops Kasim Uma.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. Kasim Uma is certainly a guy past his prime, over the hill. There has to be a middle ground with Vanes Martirosyan. Martirosyan is a guy that likes to be on his toes, but I think at times he was falling into that dangerous level, at least for me, of being the Armenian Yuri Foreman. I think in the last 2 or 3 outings, he's been a little bit better of sitting down in the pocket. Not being so much on the roller skates, but putting on the combat boots, setting his feet, and planting. Also on this card, is a very young, talented prospect, the brother of Robert Garcia, former IBF junior lightweight champion, Miguel Mickey Garcia. There's another kid that I like, and another top-ranked prospect managed by Cameron Duncan. If this kid has a chin, I think he can go places. He has all the offensive tools, Gabe.
Oh yeah, he's got everything. He's got the hook, he's got the lead. He's got it all.
Accuracy,
yeah,
point accuracy.
Very, very accurate young fighter. But that also could be the people that they're bringing him up against. I think we're going to start to see him step up as we get further along in the year. And like you said, we're going to find out if he has a chin, and if he does, everybody better look out.
And wrapping it up here, we go to a couple of tidbits. Some upcoming fights. March 6th on HBO Boxing After Dark. WBC junior welterweight champion Devin Alexander takes on IBF champion Juan Urango. And there's a fight being discussed, and it looks good here for April 24th. Chris Arreola takes on Thomas Adamek in a heavyweight shootout. And then May 1st, it was announced by Golden Boy, Juan Manuel Marquez versus TBA from the MGM Grand. HBO pay-per-view. Going back up top, Alexander Urango. I like this fight. You know, Urango is a very solid, stout 140-pounder. Obviously out of his element at 147. I'll say this, Devin Alexander has a lot of talent, but this will be the strongest, most offensive fighter he will have faced if he can win and add another belt. I think it's a very, very nice cachet Alexander's building up as a young champion.
Yeah, I think it's a very winnable fight for Alexander. He's got speed, he's got straight punches, he does use his jab, and he can move around the ring very well. Urango is a guy that doesn't even know what a jab is, it seems at times. You know, he just comes straight in. He has a lot of offensive lapses, but he does pressure very well. He cuts the ring off very well, and he's got tremendous, tremendous power. And he's a very strong 140-pound fighter. I think this is a very good fight. I think it's a perfect fight for Alexander, and I think he wins. I don't think he gets to stop it.
I like Alexander's mobility. Also, Urango, when it comes to punch output and letting it go, he seems to put it on layaway. He's going to have to let his hands go. And Ariola Adamek, I understand if this fight is made, that there's a very good chance that Pedro Angulo will be on that undercard. It might be out in Ontario at the Citizens Business Bank Arena. I'm going to say this right now. I don't care if these guys are not champions. I don't care about the Klitschkos or David Haye. Adamek against Ariola is one of the 3 or 4 best action fights, not just in the heavyweight division, all of boxing.
I would totally agree. I mean, it's just going to be a
Bombs
great
away.
fight. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to meet. They're going to get in the phone booth and close the door behind them and just get to work. It's going to be a great fight. Now, I don't know much about Adamek as a true heavyweight guy. You know, he just had the Galata fight, but it was kind of the ghost of Galata that he beat. And he's going to be in with a guy in Ariola who fights like a junior middleweight. He throws a lot of punches. He does know how to jab. His boxing skills are actually kind of underrated. You know, granted he did lose to Klitschko, but everybody loses to Klitschko. I think this is a solid action fight, a very dangerous fight for both guys.
I like the style. The guys that you have to keep him away from, this being Chris Ariola, tall, angular guys are going to box from the outside and really move and make him move his feet. Adamek, despite the size, he's only going to be about 215 to 220. He's a guy that fights like a heavyweight. He's going to plot inside. He's not going to be hard to find. Like I like to say, he's not going to need MapQuest to find him. And Chris Ariola, if he's not in shape, punch output of Thomas Adamek might be a factor in the second half of the fight if he has a heavyweight chin, which we don't know yet. But what a fight. I hope Main Events and Goose and Tudor can ink this on the dotted line. And Juan Manuel Marquez, it looks like he will not be fighting Ricky Hatton, which I don't mind. You know what? From a style perspective, I'd much rather see Juan Manuel Marquez at 135. And it looks like, it's just my opinion, I think he's going to fight Michael Katsidis.
I think it's a hell of a fight. I think it's an action fight, and it's a perfect fight for Marquez to kind of get back his lightweight feet under him. Katsidis is a guy that's going to come forward. He's going to pressure him. It's going to make for a very exciting fight. But at the same time, Marquez is a master boxer, and we're going to see just what he has left. I thought he looked very slow and kind of old against Floyd Mayweather, although most people do look pretty slow against Mayweather. And so we're going to see if he can move down to lightweight effectively, lose that weight that he put on, lose that muscle, and not have it take too much out of him. I think it's a great matchup.
And Katsidis is an all-action guy who gets banged up a lot. He's not going to be hard to find. And stylistically, if you're Marquez, if you have any bit of your reflexes left and you're the master counterpuncher, and you got a guy that's going to come one speed, one direction, it's an ideal style. But one thing about Katsidis, big ticker. This right here is not pumping Kool-Aid. So I expect to see a very good fight on May 1st. And I understand that's going to be sort of a Latin fiesta show put together by Golden Boy. Some of the other names being mentioned. I heard one rumor at the fights on Friday. Celestino Caballero against Guillermo Rigondeaux, which I think would be a fascinating fight. That this guy doesn't have even 10 fights yet. He's going to face one of the most difficult 122-pounders in the world. And then I'm hearing Victor Ortiz in a step-up fight after he fights February 25th at the Nokia Club Nokia. So I think this card could be very good, but we're going to see. Is this eventually going to be a Floyd Mayweather date? And I think we're going to find out within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, hopefully we'll find out within the next couple of weeks. I have a strange feeling that it's not going to be. I think they want to wait for May 1st. I think, the book is that Shane Mosley is going to beat Berto. It says a lot that Mayweather is advised by Al Heyman, and so is Berto. And yet they're floating this fight out as if it's kind of a gimme that Berto is going to lose. Maybe they know something we don't.
All right, well, that's it for this week's edition of TNR on behalf of Gabriel Montoya and the rest of Max Boxing. To the next round, and goodbye, everybody.